What's up, everybody? Appreciate you being here. Wanted to let you know before we get into the show, there's a couple of easy ways that you can help me with it. With ideas, problems, solutions to whatever you find interesting, anything from a word to an essay, just send it to me. Through the comment section, wherever you listen, on Instagram or Twitter, I'm on both at The Best Idea, or straight to the email, bestideapodcast@gmail.com. Or you can support it in other ways. You can rate it wherever you listen it to. That's probably the easiest. Subscribing to the YouTube page is very helpful. The most direct way is Patreon. Patreon.com/thebestidea. $1 a month just to show some support. If you do $3 a month, you'll get early access to the Stop the Presses episodes. You sign up once, you don't have to think about it again. Really appreciate your time. And here we go. Welcome back, everybody. Best Idea Podcast. I'm Stephen Cochran, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. So just accept that fact that certain problems in the world, there's nothing that can be done right now to fix it or solve it or work on it. None of that shit. So quit trying. It doesn't matter how many times this happens. There's not a goddamn thing to be done, depending on who you ask. They'll tell you that, they'll tell us that, for a lot of different reasons. People want to keep guns for a lot of different reasons. They want to be able to hunt. It's in the Constitution. They want to be able to go to the shooting range. They want to be able to defend their home if it's attacked by other people with nefarious intentions. And it's in the Constitution. Everybody gets to own a gun. And because everybody gets to own a gun, there's nothing you can do to prevent one of those people, one of those American citizens, to take their gun or to take somebody else's gun to a public place, private institution, public theater, and just start shooting people. You can't stop them from doing that. You can't stop them from doing it at a college or high school or an elementary school. There's no way that you can stop it from happening. You might as well not even try. Now, you could put armed guards at the school. That might stop it. Or you could give the teachers guns at schools, if we're sticking just with schools. When it comes to everywhere else, you just make sure that you promote guns as much as you can so that more people are carrying guns. That way, if somebody that should have a gun because they're an American citizen, somebody that should have a gun decides to use it against the law, well, there will be other people around with the weaponry to stop that person. And the fortitude and the good judgment and the courage to gun someone down in public because they are shooting at other people. So there are some ways you could stop it, actually. You can basically surround more places with people that have guns. I wonder what it is about the school situations that makes people, I don't know, they seem to fake it harder. Public figures, politicians, they put on more of a show when it comes to these elementary school kids than they do at a supermarket, for example, or even a college, or the synagogue shootings that have happened, or the shootings at the black churches, the elementary school really, really brings out everybody together to say the same thing. There's this comedian, Anthony Jeselnik, who did a show called Thoughts and Prayers and explained really eloquently that when you hear people say that, thoughts and prayers, they're just reminding you that they aren't to be forgotten in the midst of all this. And it's a good thing to keep in mind. People that only ever send their thoughts and prayers for as their contribution to something happening is really just waving a flag to let people know that they're not to be forgotten. It's not doing anything tangible. Saying out loud that your thoughts and prayers are with the victims of a tragedy does absolutely nothing. Because if your thoughts and prayers are there, then those thoughts and prayers will do whatever it is you believe that they'll do. Announcing it doesn't do anything extra except let other people know that you're doing something privately. You know what I mean? So there's some things you can do, but there's some things that you can't do. You can surround a school with armed guards, or you can turn teachers into armed guards and I guess add training for that on top of what teachers already do. So there's some things you can do to try and control the person. You know, that's really what it boils down to when you talk about stopping something. Well, you can either stop the distribution, the creation and distribution of the item being used, or you try and stop the person that's using it. In this case, with guns, you can either try to regulate the gun or you can regulate the person. And these measures that I'm mentioning right now are to regulate the person. You put an armed guard at a school, they would stop a person that was approaching the school with bad intentions and a big weapon. They would be there to stop them. Now, that's assuming that this officer or security guard would have the courage to not only approach someone who they think is a threat, but to open fire on someone that is already doing, one of these mass shootings like we saw at Stoneman Douglas. There was an armed guard there. I believe he waited outside while the shooting happened. I'm not judging that guy. I've never been in that situation. All of us would like to think what we would do if we were there. You don't fucking know, neither do I. So I'm not passing judgment on that guy. He's certain, but he did not have the courage, did not have the bravery to go into that school. I don't know that I would have the bravery to go into that school. I'd like to think I would, but there's nothing to prove that whatsoever. That's just me sitting here talking to you, and I'm sure you think the same thing. I'm not judging that guy, but he was what they were calling for. And there have been other places where armed guards were there and they were killed too. But you're trying to regulate the person. When you have armed teachers, same exact thing. You're trying to regulate the person. Somebody comes in, they start shooting. Teacher will have the gun and the training and the wherewithal and the fortitude to use that gun to defend her class. It's better than having just a vulnerable class. But it regulates the person, forcefully regulates the person. Mental health is a big one that pops up around these times. Now you almost hate, I almost hate those two fucking words because they're two of the most abused words in the English language. And they're thrown around with no real context about what exactly is being talked about in the moment. It's just mental health, as though any of us, including the user, really knows what they're talking about. So when these things happen, it's, it's obviously a mental health issue. So is a person definitely, A person who does this is definitely what? Like, what do you mean by mental health? And again, this comes down to regulating the person, because it's the person that has, these alleged mental problems. But how do you actually define that? And then how do you address it? So are you saying that these people are psychotic? Are they psychopaths? Are they sociopaths? Are they narcissists? Do they have dissociative identity disorder? What do you mean by mental health? Are they on the spectrum? And how does it pertain to shooting a bunch of people? Are they psychotic? Are they schizophrenic? Do they have paranoid delusions? What do you mean by mental health? And then go one further. How are you going to die? Because everything I just said is a different fucking problem. Those require different things. So what exactly do we mean by it? But I guess if we assume we know what we mean and we move on, we're talking about what? Giving people pills that we think are crazy, locking people up that we think are crazy, kids that draw a bunch of profane, bloody pictures and talk about committing one of these acts. What are you going to do? Take that person and put them into a hospital? You're going to find that person? What about the ones that aren't putting messages on Facebook talking about how badly they want to shoot people? How many holes are there in that idea of this mental health idea? We're going to find the people that are deranged, and we're going to do something with them that will prevent these things from happening. On top of the fact that people can just lie, and they can lie well enough that you won't find them, and you're not going to just find every crazy kid in in a high school, a college that might turn into a school shooter, or just any person in the community, or not even in the community. This guy that did the Buffalo shooting wasn't even from Buffalo. So you're going to somehow find these people that are willing and able to commit one of these atrocities, and then do what with them? How would you're going to bring them to court? Are we going to try them? Are you just going to lock people up do we want to give the government that power to decide, okay, you're crazy and you need to be locked up because you're a danger to the community? And is that what we're trying to do? We're trying to let the government regulate more people in that way and decide that? Is that really where we're at? Because that's what this mental health shit means. Regulating the person. How are you going to regulate people like that? It doesn't seem to make any sense. There's only one thing to regulate, and that's to regulate access to the gun. You can't change what some people say are evil people, bad people, however you want to describe somebody that can pick up a gun and as a 7-year-old runs away from them in absolute terror, shoots that 7-year-old in the back with a bullet that is longer than that kid's chest is deep, and continue doing that, however you want to describe that person. The idea that we're going to find all those people is, to me, absurd. How could you possibly? You can't. So what is the only thing that we could do to stop this from happening? And that is to regulate the gun, the access to the gun. But you know what's a motherfucker? As I say that, is most of you agree with me. If I wrote out some ideas, there are some of them that every single one of you, more than likely, whether you have a gun, which I own one, but whether you have one or several or are staunch advocate for the Second Amendment, or you're in the NRA or whoever, or you've never owned a gun and don't care to and think that nobody should, wherever you fall on the spectrum, we actually all agree on some stuff. So, for example, I went to a gun show once in my home state of Louisiana and watched a person that I know for a fact has at least one felony purchase an AK-47 with a banana clip at a gun show. That shouldn't happen anywhere. And I feel very comfortable saying we all agree on that. That's where these background checks come in. So the real shit of it is we all, us, the people, agree on certain things. We don't agree on everything. Some people want to ban types of guns and magazines and stuff, and there's a lot of back and forth about that. But some of that shit we completely agree on. Why don't we have it? Because there's 5 million people in the National Rifle Association who pay their dues. They pay like $50 a year, or you can get a 5-year membership for $150 a year. And all that money is spent going to different politicians to pay them to not change any of the current gun laws, not to make it any harder to own guns. It is just that simple. So it doesn't even matter what you think about this gun issue, because if you don't fall in with the 80% of us that want certain things to happen, like background checks, and there's different percentages for the next couple of ideas, which are, that's the boilerplate shit that you hear every time. Bump stocks, banning assault weapons, age limits on gun purchases, waiting periods. There's different percentages of people, but they're all in the majority, like the vast majority. And in a democracy, when you don't fall in the majority, you don't get your way. That's the way it's supposed to go. I'm not talking about a slim majority either. I'm talking 65, 70% on all those things, up and down. You don't get what you want when you're not in the majority. So if you don't agree with those things I just said, that's all right, but you're not in the majority. You shouldn't be the one getting what you want. So why is it that those of us that want to see and a lot of these people, 60+%, they're in the NRA. People that want to have like universal background checks. Like every single time you buy a gun, you should have to have a background check. It's gun owners that want there to be more training when it comes to guns, because they know they can shoot, and they know they're not going to participate in slaughter at a music festival. So they don't mind having more training because it keeps shitty people from getting guns. There's a lot of gun owners that agree with this stuff. But even if you don't, you're not in the majority. So, it's just one of those tough shit sort of things. But there's like 5 million people that keep giving their money to this particular group that pays all these politicians to not pass the shit that we want. And, of course, the people that make money through gun sales, people that make guns, they give a lot of money to the NRA as well. I'm just bringing this up because I don't want there to be any confusion as to the only reason why we don't get what we want. It's very simple. It is singular. It's just the money. And I think a lot of times we think that that's the reason for other things not happening with, healthcare and all this sort of stuff. This one it's smaller because it really does boil down to this one organization, the NRA, and then, maybe 5 or 6 different gun manufacturers and companies. It's a smaller thing because there's fewer players involved. It's like, look, it's just those guys over there. It's just these. When it comes to like healthcare, you've got, hospitals, then you've got doctors, and then administrators. There's all this layered bullshit, all different competing interests, lawyers, the whole thing, the whole works. With the guns, it's just those fucking guys. It's just those 8 dudes over there that are between us and stuff that, I mean, it would just keep. We'd have 169 more alive former kids now. It seems so easy and so worth it. But the money fucking talks. We allow these people to spend so much money that it makes it worth it. And you can, it's the same shit we hear every single time of, imagine if it was your kids, but they're not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. They're too far removed, and they're paid to not care. I started the episode, I had, a little list of ideas. It's, the best idea podcast. But this is one where who gives a shit? Nothing's going to move on this. I'll tell you, the best idea, do something about private money in politics. That's it. That's all. This one comes down to that and that alone. You're not going to shift people's cult. You can't get more agreement. There's nobody left to convince on the background check thing, for example. Just take that alone. This universal background check. There's nobody left to convince. It's like fucking 80% of people agree with that. And in any real democracy, 20% doesn't get to run the show. So there's nobody left to convince. So that's not the problem. The idea is one, as far as people are concerned. We agree. Why is it not happening? Money, period, end of story. Every couple of years, somebody will, change their mind. There was this Florida congressman named Brian Mast in 2016. He was a Republican, and one of his campaign ads was talking about how people need to be prepared to defend other people if a shooting, he's one of these good shooter beats a bad shooter kind of things. And then, February 2018, he changes his mind, wants to ban assault weapons, ban bump stocks because of the mass shootings in 2017 and 2018. So, he's one. There's Phil Scott. He was a Republican governor, had an A rating with the NRA. He changed his mind after enough mass shootings. John Kasich, he was a Republican governor, same thing. It's a slow trickle. Every now and then somebody that has some authority will change their mind, but it's not enough of them. The money is just too great. There's one I saw earlier today. There's just one senator. I think it's Rob Portman. Rob Portman. He's got like $3 million from the NRA. So we're talking big money. And that's just one guy. So until that changes, all of our kids are going to be taught what to do if a shooter is on campus. They're going to be reminded on occasion that someone might come to their school to try and murder them. And any of us that send our, kids of any age through to college, it's a very, very low risk that your kids are going to be murdered at their school. But here in the great US of A, it's a risk that your 6-year-old might just be doing her lessons in arithmetic, and the teacher runs to the door to bolt it shut because she hears gunshots, and then somebody kicks the door in, and your 6-year-old is standing there stunned or crying and gets gunned down with 3 or 4 bullets through her little torso. Why not? The thing that if we could do one thing to fix this problem right now, it would be no boy under the age of 25 gets to own a semi-automatic weapon. Period. None of them. Who mostly perpetrates these things, and not just the mass shootings, but just shootings in general. It is boys under the age of 25. Why 25? 25 is when the brain finishes the work it has to do on the parts that are good at making rational decisions. 25 is like the cutoff, the general end of that process. So we stop every boy, because girls don't do this shit, from owning a gun under the age of 25, semi-automatic. Because, see, you'll run into sort of problems. I've had this brought up to me. There might be constitutional problems with just preventing the owning of arms. And we do have to think it is in the Constitution, and that is not going to change. So we live in a country, we're going to have to make laws that work with that. Okay, fine. You can have a single-shot rifle before you're 25. From 18 to 25, that is your weapon. If you want to go hunting with it, if you want to go practice with it, bolt action rifle. Nothing semi-automatic. That one thing would probably stop a lot of this. If you throw in there a little extra, which is making parents responsible for their kids, if your kids take your gun and go shoot people with it, that's your problem. You probably stop a lot of this from happening. But, unfortunately, it's probably not going to come to pass. And neither will any of the other good ideas that any of us might have, where we can still have the right of owning guns because it's in the paperwork. Till you change that, none of your bitching matters, so don't worry about it. Until that changes, we have to figure out a way around it. It's another sad day, but these happen really often. So it should be something that we all think about. If for no other reason, then, those kids deserve to be thought about at the very least. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.